Concierto de Aranjuez, a synthesis of classical and popular in both form and emotion, lies dreaming beneath the foliage of the park that surrounds the Baroque palace, and only wishes to be as agile as a butterfly and as precise as the pass of a matador's cape. Named after the famous royal site on the shore of the river Tajo, not far from Madrid, along the road to Andalucía, the Concierto de Aranjuez is full of melancholy emotion. Its music brings to life the essence of an 18th century court, where aristocratic distinction blends with popular culture. In its melody linger the perfume of magnolias, the song of the birds, and the whisper of the fountains.
Caminando por los jardines de Aranjuez y contemplando el bello palacio, no es difícil imaginarse de dónde surgió la inspiración para el concierto de Aranjuez. Pero debo confesar que aunque es más fácil imaginarse el primer movimiento con los pájaros y los jardines y el último con el palacio, me queda una cierta inquietud de qué fue exactamente lo que sintió Rodrigo cuando escribió su segundo movimiento, que es tan profundo y tan bello y tan triste y describe tantas emociones. Well, quite simply, I was asked if I would want to do a recording of Rodrigo with the London Philharmonia Orchestra and with Placido Domingo. So, I mean, there wasn't much to think about. Of course, you know, I was very excited immediately to be able to collaborate with an orchestra like the Philharmonia, and of course with Domingo. I mean, and it's really been a great experience to do it. It's been lots of fun, you know, to hear this beautiful music and to hear the beautiful sound of the orchestra, and to be able to work with Domingo, which was in many ways a great surprise, because I don't know why I was expecting. In fact, I had never really met him before, but I expected to hear trumpets and then a red carpet for him to come in, you know. And I was just taken with how the opposite he was. It was really a joy to be sitting there next to him and to see the feelings and his perception of the music.
So I think it'll be easier for me to get
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 after 1.
To me, the first movement is obviously about the park and about the nature and about the birds. And, you know, for example, even the very beginning of the piece, as we begin with it, I mean, just the guitar and the rasgueado sounds, you know, immediately it's Spain, you know, but and it's very much Spanish music, but it's also very elegant. Well, I was 8 when I began to play, and when I began to play the guitar, in fact, it wasn't classical guitar. It was popular Latin American songs in Cuba, and then the way that I've been told was that apparently this teacher told my father that I seemed to have some talent and that I should learn music and solfege and so on. So I was given a teacher that taught me classical guitar and solfege and so on. But at first there was a bit of resistance, you know, so he would trade, you know, one classical piece for maybe 3 pop songs or so, until again, you know, I just fell in love with it, and that's all I would want to do. So I think I was playing just classical maybe by the time I was 9 or so. The guitar that I chose to use for this recording is a guitar made by Robert Rock, who's an American luthier, and it's a guitar that I got in 1972, and that may seem like a very young guitar for, as instruments go, especially violins and so. But for a guitarist, that's quite old actually, because guitars get better all the time, and it's not unusual to have the guitarists that you know, they will change guitars every 2 or 3 years. And I've played basically the same guitar for 20-some years, which may not seem as young as I look, but anyway. And I've been a one-guitar man up until last year. And now in concerts, I am using a different guitar made by a man called Matthias Dahmen, which is a German guitar, which is it's quite a powerful instrument. For the recording, I'm using the Rock because it's much more mellow and singing quality to it. I started in Cuba, and a lot of the influences came from this Segovia school of playing. It was a very intuitive kind of teachings that I received when I was a child. And then when I got to the U.S., I studied with Aaron Shearer in Baltimore, and he was a huge influence because he was just exactly the opposite of what I had done. He was a very intellectual type of approach to the instrument and very rational. And coming where I was coming from, I found that has been a good balance for me. I mean, in writing this piece, he created one of the most famous concertos of any instrument from this century. And for us guitarists, having such a famous piece been written for it, it's of great value. I mean, a pianist they have everything, but for us to have such a concerto that for which is so much demand and which works so well, and which is so beautiful and people like so much. It's really something that at least I personally really appreciate. Between the pastoral qualities of the first movement and the courtliness of the third lies the most powerful moment of the piece, and where the piece makes a statement, and also what has made the Concierto de Aranjuez so famous, which is the second movement. The second movement apparently was written as a love song, as a celebration of the love that he felt for his wife. And it's also, I think, it is meaningful, the fact that it was written at a time where there had been a loss in the family, and there are anecdotes of his staying late at night composing the music that became the second movement. Again, the piece works in a magical way, also guitaristically. The characteristic of the guitar sound is the vibrato, staccato sound of the instrument, the decaying sound as the string vibrate. And that's the heart of the expression of this movement, with the famous theme of where all these feelings that we've been talking about are obviously embodied in that melody.
Joaquín Rodrigo was born in the historic city of Sagunto in 1901. Just a stone's throw from his house stood the musical society Lira Saguntina, where as a young boy he would spend many hours listening to the musicians as they rehearsed.
Que estamos aquí porque estamos haciendo una grabación de su música con...
Joaquín Rodrigo was always very fond of the Spanish vihuelist and very fond of the music of that time, 16th and 17th century. And this together, that the guitar is the Spanish instrument, really, the typical Spanish instrument, made him just to write first the Concierto de Aranjuez. Actually, the first work for guitar was the Zarabanda Lejana, inspired in this vihuelist Luis de Milan. But then, after the Concierto de Aranjuez, I think guitarists came to him to ask him to write more works for guitar, and little by little, without realizing, he was writing a lot for guitar.
Despite the loss of his sight at the age of 3, he went on to study harmony and composition at the École Normale de Musique in Paris, gaining recognition as an accomplished composer.
Well, I think one of the great things about the piece, aside from the musical value of it, is how well it's written for the guitar with the orchestra.
Yeah,
and it is amazing how in many situations it can be done even without amplification.
Absolutely.
And how well he did the orchestration.
Absolutely.
But for the orchestra, it makes it difficult because it's very transparent. So they have to be very careful in how they play.
Yes, and then to make the entrance just right when you finished the, how would you say, escalas?
The scales?
The scales, it's so difficult when you finish the scale, and the orchestra must come in just at the right time, which most of the time they miss.
Yeah, well, with me, they can tell by the sweat, you know, when I see this.
Rodrigo composed using a braille machine. He would then dictate each single note of the composition to a copyist before the manuscript could go to a publisher. Surprisingly, few people outside Spain are aware of his blindness.
This is a phenomenon. I think the Concierto de Aranjuez is a social phenomenon, that it's a work that difficult to compare with any other concerto for the 20th century. I think it goes directly to the heart of the people of any condition. All people from any country, any color, is particularly touched by this famous melody of the second movement, and it's difficult to compare with other works.
most of the people knows the Aranjuez, Concierto de Aranjuez, because of the second movement, which of course is the highlight of the piece. But as Manuel said, he wrote really technically so fantastic for the guitar. He gives the possibilities for a great player, you know, to really show the virtuosism of as a player, and of course the colors that he has in the orchestra. The orchestration is simple but so absolutely beautiful with the right atmosphere. Then, I mean, you cannot help but just try to do the best you can. It will be a shame. So we don't know each other as musicians. We have a mutual admiration, and I think that it was great. You know, of course the notes are there. We are musicians. We can read the notes, but I think the interpretation, we came out into a understanding of each other, and it was really very enjoyable.
The last movement is the most courtly of all the movements of the Concierto de Aranjuez. In fact, he writes that the movement should be played with nobility, as he marks it allegro gentile. And there is a quote also that I read where he says that the piece should be played in a way that describes, and it should be as agile as a butterfly and with the preciseness of a matador's cape path. And you can tell also in the rhythm, the way he goes from threes to twos, and he goes pum 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 cha-da-dum, cha-da-dum, which again makes it very elegant.